Hello, how are you all doing today? Can you be a little louder, please? See, these people are too kind to me. I am just I think a couple of years older than all of you sitting here. So I'm not going to try to motivate you to do anything, okay? One, because again, I'm just 2 years probably older than all of you. And the other reason is because I think motivation doesn't exist. It's a hoax that we create to cover up for our laziness. कि motivational feel नहीं कर रहे थे, motivated feel नहीं कर रहे थे, तो we didn't do this or we didn't do that. But I think at the end of the day, it's just about doing or not doing, which is quite contrary to the theme today. But I think life and most things in life are just around this one binary situation where it's just people who do and people who don't. But coming on to what we're going to talk about today. See, there's this question I've always seen being raised, which is, what is this one thing that is constant in life, in the world? Is it the love that you have for luxury cars? Is it the dream that you saw in fourth grade? Is it the crush that you had in 11th standard? Is it the love that you have for A.R. Rahman's music? But then you grow and you realize that dreams change over time. You grow out of them, they grow out of you. You realize that the luxury cars are too out of reach, so you start aiming for bikes instead. You realize that crushes keep getting updated with every new person who says hello to you in college. And music taste तो बना ही change होने के लिए. So then what is it? What is it that creates the answer to this question? What's the most constant thing in life? This Friday morning, I figured out the answer. I definitely did not write this speech like 10 days ago. I figured out it today. And I think the answer to that question is questions. See, we might run out of water, of fossil fuels, of art, of answers, but we as a race will never, I think, run out of questions to ask. Questions that we ask ourselves, questions that other people ask us, questions that originate with who do I want to be at the end of high school and then turn into who am I becoming in the third year of college. But today, we're gonna get to the root of that. And there's this one question that's always been asked, that people ask me a lot. And that question is, and you need to listen to this carefully because you also might have this question. Once you start figuring out what you like doing, how do you get certain that it is exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life, that it is your passion, that it is your calling? How do you attend it? Now, if you have this question or any other iteration of it, like how do you figure out your calling? How do you figure out your passion? How do you know that this is what you're meant to be doing in your life? Then by the end of the speech, I am hopeful you'll have an answer. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to share some stories, and along with them, I'm going to share some negative observations that they made me have about following your dreams. Why? Because I have the mic and you're here for the next 15 minutes anyway. And two, because you will see at the end. So the first story takes us back to 2012. I am 12 years old. I just turned 12. And there's this Hindi poetry recitation competition at my school, right? And the rules of the competition are extremely simple. All you have to do is pick a poem by anybody. It could have been written by anybody. You just have to pick it, you have to memorize it, you have to practice it, and you have to perform it on stage, and that's it. So I picked this poem called Jo Beet Gayi So Baat Gayi by Mr. Harivansh Rai Bachchan. And I had memorized it. It was on my tips. I had learned it by heart. I had practiced it multiple times. I remember reading it out in front of my mirror probably a couple hundred times. And I was confident about winning the competition. And just 2 days before it, I got to know that a batchmate from a preceding section had also chosen the same poem. And if you can't quite connect the dots, it meant disqualification because he was about to perform before me and I couldn't have performed the same poem. And so I thought, what if I just choose another poem and that somebody else chooses that to. What if I write my own? I thought to myself. It's been more than 10 years and I'm still like the most grateful for that one thought. Because that sent me off on a journey. That sent me off on this journey of filling notebooks, diaries, writing poems, stories, everything I could possibly get out of my heart, of my mind. See, I never thought of myself as a cool kid in school, at least not by my own standards. But when I held a pen for the first time while writing something that came straight out of my heart and not something that I had been told to write, I felt like I was special for the first time. Like I was cool. Like I was doing something that nobody else was. And that's how you know it. When you start doing what you really love, you start feeling like the king of the world or queen of the world. But getting back to our question, how do you figure out what that one thing is if multiple things make you feel this way? For that, we'll need to build an answer and we'll keep on going. What happens a year later, in 2013, is that I start working on a longer story, a 30-page long story, and I start calling it a novel, knowing not that you don't call a mere 30 pages a novel, but I was 13. What do you expect of me? The day was 18th of September 2013. And I remember the day because it was just a day before my birthday that year. I remember I had finished the novel, in bits and pieces, in a diary here and there, in notebooks, in rough pin pages or whatever. And on 18th September 2013, I sat down to write it down in one tidy new notebook. And I just started writing it. My fingers were hurting. My fingers had developed this temporary dent that you have when you press a pen hard enough against them for a long enough time. But I just didn't care. I wanted to write that novel into this new compact new diary in the best handwriting I could get out of myself so I could go to school the next day and show it to anybody who'd care enough to read it. To my teachers, to my friends, to girls I used to have crushes on, emphasis on crushes. And so when I went to school the next day, I showed it to my teachers, my friends. They all loved it. They saw a 12, 13-year-old kid holding this novel in his hands that he had written. I carried it everywhere with me, to the canteen, to the recess, to the assembly, to the events that day, to the lunch break, to the ground. When I came back from the ground after the lunch break ended, some 20 minutes into the lecture, I realized that I didn't have that notebook with me. I had left it in the ground. I ran and I ran and I ran and I just couldn't find it anywhere. I genuinely am trying very hard, but I can't even fathom how heartbreaking it would have been for 13-year-old Priyanshu. But not enough, not as much as how heartbreaking the realization would have been when he got home to realize that his mom had disposed of the rough drafts and the pages and the pin pages and the diaries unknowingly as well. So here's this 13-year-old kid who had just written his novel and had no copy of it. That brings us, we shall not deviate, that brings us to the first negative realization I had about following your dreams. It's that the heartbreaks you get while following your dreams are going to hurt you more than anything that has ever touched your heart. So on 22nd of September 2023, I did that. My first ever solo show, 1 hour of stories and poems. It got sold out in under an hour. Everything was perfect. Except one thing, which I didn't know what it was. But it was somewhere up here. I just didn't know what was wrong. But something was wrong. The show happened. It was magical. It was probably more magical than magic itself. I performed with 3 of my best friends. There were people who sobbed after the show. They hugged me, told me how it had changed something in them they didn't even know existed. It had healed something in them. They told me how they would go on to attend more poetry shows now. But I just didn't feel anything, didn't process anything. But now that you know me, you know the story doesn't end here. The next day, I remember sitting on the same edge of my bed, numb. I didn't have any ounce of pride, of contentment, of satisfaction, of happiness, nothing, none of those feelings that a person should have after doing their first sold out show. And to break the suspense, it was because of my bank balance. So I thought, why not go out and have a walk? Why not just go to my favorite place in town and I'll have chai, I'll have samosa, I'll walk around, I'll have a breath of fresh air, and I might possibly feel better. And just then I checked my bank balance and it had all of 320 rupees in it, which is not bad. Saying it is bad would be a very privileged statement in this country. And technically, I could still go to Connaught Place and do all of that in those bucks. But कभी-कभी कुछ चीज़ें इतनी कम होती हैं कि ऐसा लगता है कि वो नहीं है, because then you don't look at them like you can enjoy them. You look at कि इनको बचाना है, ये भी ना खत्म हो जाए. The math was just not mathing. So I sat there until I got up, went to my bathroom, sat on the bathroom floor, and sobbed, and sobbed, and sobbed, and kept on doing that a day after doing a sold out show. And so the next negative realization is also the last. And it will also tell you why I was doing this all along. After all of these instances that I've just shared, after all of these observations that I've just made, the realizations that I've had, if you still somehow figure out a way to make a time machine and send me 2 days before that Hindi poetry recitation competition and tell me that you could either just choose another popular Hindi poem, practice it, memorize it, perform it, or write your own and carry on with this jazz for all these years to come, I would do it the exact same way all over again. I'd lose another novel. I'd embarrass myself in front of more thousands of people. I'd have another job being snatched away from me. I'd sob for more hours if I have to on that bathroom floor. Because I'd do that before even thinking once that I'd probably do something else with my life. And that is how you know. When you go after your dreams, there are multiple terrible things waiting to happen. But if you are still willing to go after them, that is the only answer you need. It's that or nothing. So if you know now that you are sure about what you are dreaming, I wish you the best of luck. It's all worth it. Go be the kings and queens of the world. Thank you.